Our fans, our millions of fans, not just here in the great nation's capital, but across the world, the organization, the players, the coaches, and their families to do everything we can to win. The culture is actually damn good. These people care. We have a very young core of players that we have brought in here who are accustomed to winning.
All right, that was Washington's team president Bruce Allen making a rare media appearance saying the Redskins don't have a culture problem. Let's welcome in our NFL analyst, Dan Orlovsky. Good to have you here with us. Stephen A., you were the one that broke this news about Jay Gruden over a week ago. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about Washington moving forward as a team?
Well, I'm optimistic only because there's nowhere for them to go but up. But having said that, let me deviate or veer left just a little bit to address Mr. Bruce Allen, somebody that obviously doesn't make himself available to media, but I interviewed him a few months ago, Dan and Max, on my radio show. Let me say this. That might be one of the most ignorant statements I've ever seen an executive make in my career. To sit up there and to say you don't have a culture problem in the nation's capital. Everything about the organization points to a culture issue. You have no identity. People don't seem to be on the same page, whether it's the coach and the president, or the coach and ownership, or ownership with some players but not others, etc. Because remember the days of RG3 and how RG3 was presumably an individual willing to circumvent around Coach Mike Shanahan because he had a personal relationship with Daniel Snyder, and how Mike Shanahan felt that compromised him and ultimately RG3's development under him. The list goes on and on with the plethora of examples that highlight a cultural issue, and ultimately your record speaks for itself. You ain't been to the playoffs since 2015. You haven't won a playoff game since 2005. You've been to about 5 playoff appearances. 5 since 1992. 5 playoff appearances in 24 years. And somehow, some way, you're saying you don't have a culture problem? I mean, that just reeks of ignorance. Again, I talked to him, I interviewed him. It was a fun interview. I appreciate it. But I mean, damn, to sit up there in front of the microphone and to look people in the face with a straight face and go like, hey, the coach is pretty good. I mean, my Lord, it reeks of ignorance. Now, having said all of that, when you have that level of ignorance and the level of productivity, where else are you going but up? Because you can't go much lower. That's where I'm at.
I'm pessimistic about Washington's future. Washington will never be good, really, in any sustained way, so long as Dan Snyder owns the team, because he's a terrible owner. He's the worst in the NFL, I think, right now. Donald Sterling had the Clippers and had Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan and Chris Paul in their primes with Doc Rivers as the coach. They were never going to win a championship as long as Donald Sterling had that team. Never. It was never going to happen. The Knicks with Jim Dolan. Every year, Knicks fans get optimistic. Something good's going to happen. Trust me. They will never win a championship with Jim Dolan as owner. I'm pessimistic about the Knicks. I'm pessimistic about Washington because a fish rots from the head down. And Bruce Allen has a lot of nerve. Recall the Reuben Foster controversy, right? Who did they throw out in front of the media? Who was not made available? Bruce Allen. You alluded to that, Stephen A. Who was made available? Doug Williams. No, that's a rotten culture. No accountability at the top. Bruce Allen hiding behind, what is his VP of player personnel because Doug Williams was a Super Bowl winner for them and people feel good about it. Maybe it was because he's an African-American executive and the feeling was that, I'm speculating, maybe he will be subject to less criticism by the press or something like that. It was craven and typical of the way the Washington franchise is run. Of course, precisely what they have. The issue in Washington is simply and only a culture problem. It starts with Dan Snyder, it goes down to Bruce Allen, and so on. I am pessimistic.
All right, so I'm going to say I'm optimistic. I don't need to sit here and recount everything that has gone wrong with the Washington Redskins. If you want, go watch SVP from last night, and he lays it out very clearly what's gone on in the last 20 years.
He's from there.
Yeah, in the last 20 years in that organization.
Football crazy town.
Yeah.
But I'll say I'm optimistic because of this. it's opportunity in Washington. There's not a lot of times where you get opportunity in pro sports to look at yourself in the mirror and go, what aren't we good at? And I understand that Dan Snyder has never done that, but maybe this time he will. Maybe this time he can look and go, you know what? I can't control everything, because I always say this, in the NFL, once you find the head coach and you find the quarterback, now you're good. They had that with RG3 and Mike Shanahan. Listen, I played against RG3. He was very, very good. They ruined him. So you have to learn from that. Can you learn from your past and take advantage of opportunity that's in front of you? That's why I'm optimistic. They have a young player in Dwayne Haskins, who I think is a very bright future in the NFL if they find the head coach. They have young talent, which is, Bruce Allen said a lot of weird stuff yesterday, but he is correct that they do have a good amount of a young core in talent.
What was weird? What did he say that was weird?
When he said, well, we don't have a culture problem. I grew up in culture. With the Detroit Lions, initially, we had a culture problem when there was no accountability. There was no core value. There was no everybody on the same page. There was finger pointing. There was no one saying, I was wrong here. So I grew up in that culture. He's lying about that. That being said, they do have young core of Jonathan Allen and Landon Collins and Terry McLaurin and Dwayne Haskins. Scherf is still young. There are good young pieces there, Kerrigan, that they can build off of. They have to continue to draft well. They need to find the head coach. That's why I'm optimistic, because if there is opportunity that lies ahead for the Washington Redskins that we don't often see in the NFL, where you still have young, good core players and a potentially bright, promising quarterback. You just have to find the head coach.
No, I think.
Well, I would challenge you when you say he's lying. If he were being interviewed by somebody or whatever, that'd be different. But to stand up at a podium, at a press conference, upon the firing of your head coach, and to say that with a straight face, I don't think he's lying at all. I think he's that lost. I think it's entirely plausible. I think it's entirely plausible that he actually might believe there's no culture problem, which exemplifies, which just illuminates rather the problem in D.C., because you have people that are upstairs that might be living at a very big distance from reality. That might be the problem.
But hold on, think about it. What's Bruce Allen supposed to say? There is a culture problem. They just fired the coach. If there's a culture problem, it's either coming from his boss, Dan Snyder, or from him. He can't say there's a culture problem, because you know what that would be? That would be accepting.
Right.
That would be accepting
accountability,
responsibility. That would be accountable. And in terms of what you're saying, Dan, they have good young pieces, but you just said they have core pieces. Do they have core principles? Because if they don't, if the architecture is no good, it doesn't matter the pieces you have.
And that's a fair point, but I would say this, like, when we got Sean Payton and Drew Brees together, it worked. When we got a Jared Goff and a Sean McVay together, they started to get better. So the head coach and the quarterback are just as important as general manager selecting players or owner. I understand that those pieces are incredibly important, but we've seen organizations go from terrible once they get a quarterback and a head coach that are actually really good at what they do. Then that covers up a lot of things. Remember, in the NFL, it's not winning cures everything. It's winning covers everything. They got to get a head coach and a quarterback that can account for wins. That will cover up a lot of the issues that we're seeing come to fruition right now.
You said they ruined RG3. How so? So that doesn't happen to Deshaun Watson?
Well, they mishandled them with the injury, right?
I mean, not Deshaun Watson, excuse me, Dwayne Haskins.
Dwayne Haskins. They ruined him with the injury handling and what they continually asked him to do. He was a special talent. I remember playing on the field against him in Tampa Bay and going, this dude is incredible if they continue to keep him safe and utilize him the right way. They relied way too much on his legs. They exposed him to way too many hits, and injury became the derailment of a bright and young, promising player. Now, Dwayne Haskins, don't put him out there if you – like, I'm not liking right now when I hear he's not smart enough. Don't tell me that. Your job as a coach is to take a player from where he is to where he wants to be. It's not to ride coattails. 2, I've spent time with Dwayne Haskins. He's plenty smart enough. you put a game plan together to put him out there. The only reason you would not put Dwayne Haskins out there right now is if you don't trust the things around him, the offensive line or the skill players around him. That's the way you would ruin him, is to put him out there right now if you're not healthy to protect him or you don't have people to throw him the football. But other than that, don't ruin him.
So we're all just going to sit here on national television on this show, First Take, and just let it just slide that Jay Gruden, of all people, was questioning the intelligence of a black quarterback, particularly considering what Max
I'm not
pointed
letting
out
it slide
several weeks ago. I know you're not. But I'm just talking about, we mention it, but we don't pause. We mention it, but we go on to these other things. I'm saying stop right there. You're Jay Gruden. This ain't Bill Belichick talking about somebody now. This ain't Sean Payton. All right, this ain't even John Gruden. This is Jay Gruden. Because I didn't know he said that. You're telling me something I did not hear. Are you telling me that Mr. Mediocrity, that Jay Gruden, 1 playoff appearance in 6 years or 5.5? You understand who got the job because of his last name and his brother? Are you telling me that dude sat up there and said that Dwayne Haskins wasn't smart enough as a quarterback? Is that what I'm hearing?
What he said was he's not ready. We understand what that means.
Oh, okay.
We understand, Stephen A. When
No.
coaches say that
As a head
stuff.
coach, I'm telling you right now, as a head coach, he has a right to say if somebody is ready or not. I take no offense to that. But if he said those words that he's not smart, that would be a problem for me.
The players in Washington and Deshaun Jackson, the receiver, now in Philadelphia again, the players in Washington are demoralized. It's a demoralizing culture. And what shows you, to me, a big indicator of that, because at this level, any team in the NFL has talent to compete if they have good coaching. You know, they have, even if they're going to lose a lot, they can compete. I remember the Jets from a couple of years ago. Say what you will, but they competed hard every week, and they were in games. What I see from Washington is, and this is the tip-off to me, the defense on third down never stops anyone on third down. There's no spine there, and that's because they're demoralized. It's not an issue just that the other team is more talented. It's a bad culture.
But that's why you can be optimistic about this situation, because there's opportunity as young players there to kind of, in many ways, rise up and go, we're not going to allow what's happened here over the last 20 years be a part of it, and kind of reshape this culture. Because we can say all we want. Culture is set in place by a coach, and it is executed by players. And so this is a great opportunity. And I would point to Dwayne Haskins. For him to become the face of that franchise in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of everybody saying that the Washington Redskins stink and everybody saying there is no future there, there's awesome opportunity for him here to go, I will help or be the part of the solution and not the problem.
Way to end it on a positive note.
Thanks.
Appreciate you, Dan. Great to have quarterback perspective.